हेलो 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 एवरीवन। सो जैसे हम लोग ने प्रॉमिस किया था, वी आर बैक विथ वन मोर गेस्ट टुडे एंड दिस इज वेरी मच स्पेशल cause in this podcast we have to talk about a person who is Akil. He's already with us and he was started with the entrepreneurship, and then he is doing right now, he's working in sales right now and especially at WebEngage, and he have done lots of things in sales. He have done lots of things in sales. He have done the door to door sales and so many other things. So let's start and let's listen कि क्या है उनके पास शेयर करने के लिए. Welcome Akhil.
Welcome,
Thank,
Aquil.
thank you so much, Prateek and Dev. Thank you so much for inviting me to the podcast. I actually would really I honestly wanted to be in this podcast because when you guys started, the Indian SaaS sales ecosystem, like I just say, sales ecosystem is kind of pretty fragmented in totality, which is why I wanted to have a little bit of my say on what exactly is sales and give an influence to all of the other people who would really want to be in sales and what should be the why of why should they
Right.
join sales essentially.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll just start, since you mentioned about why sales. So for you, what is the why?
So for me, at one point of time when I was there in college, uh, just entered into college on day one essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I am currently from Kolkata right now in Mumbai, but at home I didn't essentially wanted to have a little bit of freedom. So at that point of time when I directly went into college, on the first day itself I understood that college is not for me. Engineering, I have already done engineering, so you guys also understand why essentially engineering is one of the most important things to do in life. I understood that after engineering it is also essential to understand what is the thing that you would want to do. So your calling essentially is something that you need to understand. So on the first day of its college itself, I was probably selected as one of the best speakers in college. That was my first day. Then, if I were to talk about my why, I have already been into a lot of debates, allocutions in college. I've also done a lot of MUNs, if you're already aware of it, Model
Mm-hmm.
United Nations. So, along with this, the one thing that I actually knew when I started in this career was I knew how to write. So that was my starting point. I knew what was copywriting. Then I also understood that there is also a knack for me to speak. So when I combined both of these, I understood that is there's just one single thing to do right now, which is sales, where I would actually want to influence a lot of people and help them understand the value and what they would want to bring to the table. So that was the why for me starting.
So luckily, you know that why you have to do the sales, and sales was your calling. But in India, there's a one mindset, अगर कुछ नहीं कर सकते हो तब sales करो.
So sales girl,
Sales is
got
the
it.
last option. People wanted to become a doctor, engineer, autopilot. There are so many profession, even YouTuber, but no one wanted to become a salesperson. I don't know why. Even in colleges, if you go and ask कि कौन सा profession लेना है, no one going to say I'll be a sales specialist
I'll
or
be a
I'll be in
sales
sales.
specialist. Correct. Correct.
Right.
So I
And
have a pretty great opinion on this. When people say that, so what we are currently doing is hardcore sales. Essentially, what we are trying to help people understand the value from the product that we are bringing to them. My question to people who are not in sales is: have you never done sales? I am pretty sure that no one will be ever able to say that yes, they have it because they've sold themselves to their employer they're working with. They've sold themselves to their mom and dad to going on a Goa trip. They've also sold themselves to the negotiation and objection handling to a buyer they wanted to buy vegetables from. So anyone and everyone that has been there in this world from the dawn of the civilization has done sales. So when you're talking about sales from the perspective of actually helping people, then essentially that would come into the hardcore sales part. But from what I understand in my last 26 years of existence, I understood that anything and everything that you do on a daily basis is sales. Whether it is convincing your mom and dad to go for a trip, whether it is convincing a vegetable seller to give you this at 20 rupees and not 25 rupees, whether it is convincing you to be on a podcast, essentially that is totally sales, is something that I understood.
Yeah, and there's a one theory which I personally believe. On a day-to-day basis, either someone's selling you or you are selling to someone.
Or you're selling to someone.
I was asking Dave to add something.
No, man, what Akil said, actually, I really second that, to be honest. Like for me, my journey as a sales professional started in college, where I didn't know that it was sales that I was doing. Like I was conducting football tournaments, right? And it is also sales, like convincing teams to
Exactly.
join my tournament and participate in that. Essentially that is also sales, and I totally second that.
I'd definitely like to say one thing. So, most of the time in sales, especially in India, people think
Mhm.
कि किसी को डरा के ज़्यादा sales निकल सकता है, right? If
Why,
you
why,
put
exactly.
pressure and if you say like, yeah, target करना, you have to achieve these numbers, you have to do these things, that things, right? Then instead of increasing the number, that person start feeling fear and he will not perform. So
Exactly.
if you
Exactly.
are making sure that your salespeople are comfortable and they are not into fear, they are not into pressure, they will perform. So all those
Mm.
top salespeople, they're not expert in conversation. They don't know too much about product. They are not product
Product
expert. But
savvy,
why they are
exactly.
yeah why but why they are able to do the sales? Cause they are not under any kind of pressure. Or they are not into fear. They are doing cause
Exactly.
they wanted to do it, and that's all. कोई इनको कुछ बोलेगा, they will say कि मैं जा रहा हूँ छोड़ के.
Exactly. So that was since you mentioned this, I'll actually give you a pretty good point. So I read a book called Sales EQ by Jeb Blount.
Okay.
That is the
Wonderful book. Yeah.
most fabulous book that I've read till date. आपके पास IQ होगा सही है, आपके पास EQ अगर नहीं है तो you won't be able to sell. So when you mentioned that point कि डरा के sales हो जाएगा, always at the top जितने भी ultra high performers हैं sales, they're not fearing that अगर आज मुझे कंपनी ले ऑफ कर देगा तो मैं कल क्या करूँ. Either it's about the money in the bank, or they know that मैं अगर इधर से निकलूंगा, either I can start something of myself or I'll be recruited into one of the companies ASAP. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there was also another saying कि you can do everything right in sales but not still not win a sale. You can do nothing right and still win a sale. So
Yeah. Yeah.
what
Totally.
works for me, you cannot work for you. What I can only give you some suggestions on what has worked for me, and then you can hit and trial. You need to hit and trial.
Exactly.
Use
That's a
it.
very good point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one thing, like, since we are talking about fear here, right? So I want to ask Akhil, like, about your mindset. Like, how do you defeat the fear of, maybe 1 month you might miss your target? So how do you defeat that fear? कि यार ये target, ये month शायद miss हो जाएगा target, या I won't be able to hit my quota. Like mostly sales people, SDRs, BDRs, they fear कि यार ये अगर हो गया तो क्या होगा? So how do you
Exactly.
defeat that fear?
Look, so this is a question that I'm still figuring out.
Okay.
It's not like I have an answer to this question since I'm on a podcast. मैं कुछ भी बोल के नहीं निकल सकता. I don't want to misinform people in sales. That is essentially why I would
नहीं नहीं
say
हम
that.
कट कर देंगे कुछ भी बोल के निकलोगे तो वी हैव
Why
डायरेक्टिव
exactly,
पावर.
exactly, correct. So I essentially am still figuring out how to conquer the fear of missing out targets. So one thing that I actually understood was when I wanted to beat targets, I did not think about targets.
Hmm.
And if you
Nice one,
have
nice one.
if you have that fear of not hitting targets and you just so the one thing that has actually helped me is just prospecting every single day in and day out. आपके पास जितना भी time, whether it is 1 hour, half an hour, 2 hours, whatever time that you have in the day, बस prospect up कर लो. If you're not doing it, maybe if you have that set target in mind कि हाँ मेरे पास this is the predictability that I have. अगर मैं एक दिन में एक meeting fix करता हूँ, 10 दिन में 10 meeting हो जाएगा. That is not how it works. And there might be days that on the second day and third day you don't fix any meetings, which is
Right.
why I actually understand. So that was something that I understood from Nova Benefit itself, that if you really have to, achieve your targets, just do not think about it and go with whatever you're doing best. So you need to have that system and process in place before understanding what your exact goal is. Then you will also be able to tell the employer or someone who's set the targets already that this is how far I can go. And since I am the best performer in the company, you should actually rethink the targets a little more. Is something that I would, tell everyone. So this is more for the CROs and the VP of sales, something like that. Sort. But that is how I've felt. And if you were to talk about conquering fear every day, so what I do, it is more like a temporary thing that I do, but I actually, have some of my motivational videos, my motivational videos. So I listen to what I have told myself. So that's more like a podcast that I have. I listen to it every single day. That's a 2 minute podcast that I start my day with and then probably go into it. So that is one of my defeating points of fear, and another one is working out. So
Ah,
if you actually do not work out, the confidence of speaking to another CRO with the same confidence that you're speaking to another janitor probably would not be there. So whether it is operator that you're speaking to, whether it is the end decision maker that you're speaking to, आपके पास उतना ही confidence होना चाहिए जितना आप हमेशा project करते हैं. So for that confidence to be there and zero fear of missing out, I that is why I spoke to every CRO. मतलब एक बार ऐसा भी हुआ था that I spoke to a CHRO. She said कि Akhil, just call me and just text me first and then give me a call. So that is, and then I said, what if I do not text you and again give you a call next day? So she said, you're being pretty stubborn, but let's have a meeting tomorrow. So that is how I got the meeting essentially. And there was there's a very interesting story, I'll just put it into perspective. So I was prospecting to Nivea, Nivea's brand name. So there were two, there was another one CHR and the other one was a deputy CHR. So what happened was I called one of the CHRs first, saying that, hey, would you, want to explore Nova benefits? So like, I'm just giving you an example, right? And then she said, please do not ever call me because we are already finalizing a vendor right now. We don't have time to look for another vendor. Second person को जब मैंने call किया, so I didn't know that these two guys were sitting beside each other. So when I called the second person, I said, I spoke to your CHRO and she has given me your number to reach out.
Oh, अच्छा अच्छा.
And then she said, oh, she gave you my number. अच्छा ठीक है, let me speak to her. आपने number दिया क्या? Said, who's calling? I don't know him. So, please never call me again. This is not how you do prospecting. So that was a failure story, but it was actually very helpful for me. And that is where the fear should not come in. Like अगर इसके बाद आप सोचोगे कि हम मैं दूसरा call नहीं करूँगा, that essentially is something that you should never do in sales. So if you should have that correct mindset, अब वो mindset build करने के लिए भी एक अलग story है. आप सबको ही सब कुछ बोल देते हैं कि हाँ mindset होना चाहिए, you should have this mindset, that mindset. But how to build that mindset is something that people are not talking about. So
right.
I'm still
Yeah.
figuring out the way. अगर वो figure out हो जाता तो I'll put it in front of the whole sales audience for you to also listen. That is one thing that I'm still
Yeah.
figuring out.
Yeah, यहाँ पे दो तीन चीजें हैं. The first thing, if you have a ego, if you have, kind of think कि यार how this can be happen to me, you can never be in sales, right?
Exactly.
If anyone
Exactly.
hanging on the phone and you are saying, yeah, why this is happening with me? I cannot live like this, right? How these people are talking to me, how they are saying, कि text me before calling, right? So if you have ego, you cannot be in sales. The first thing. Second,
Correct. Correct.
how I, deal my fear. I always remind myself that where I have started and how I have
Exactly.
reached here, right? And I don't have fear from falling down. I can still start my career today. I can still work at 30,000, 40,000 ka salary, and I
Exactly.
know within 6 months, within 1 year, I'll reach here again. It
Again.
will not
Exactly.
take 3 years, 4 years, 5 years.
So
Within
the
6 months, I'll
roots,
reach here.
the roots have been built totally foundational. If you have the foundational roots
Yeah,
pretty strong, you know how to
yeah,
get back up even if you start from zero. And that is true for Devdatta as well. He started from, being a software engineer at a company to now being a full-fledged sales professional with
yeah.
immense knowledge. मतलब इनके the kind of posts that I see on LinkedIn, I'm actually a fan. मतलब उसके बाद ही I thought probably नहीं, देव से बात करना है, करना है, करना है. So he knows कि इनके पास कुछ भी sales knowledge ना रहे, कि he's gotten to a point where he knows everything, like not of course everything, कुछ किसी को सब कुछ नहीं पता रहता है, but yes, a good knowledge about how sales works in India and how you need to do. So he started pretty late, but he now knows. Now he also understood if he actually goes back to zero, he will be able to start again. That is where the point that I'm trying to make.
Thanks, boss.
Yeah,
It's actually about the mindset, to be honest, right? When I started, yes, I had no idea how to write emails, how to do cold calls, anything. But
Exactly, right? So,
that hunger to learn and to implement. I think that
yeah,
that is what matters. That is what we all three did, and that's how we got some results. Then again experimented, then again got some results, and that's how you progress. So I
correct,
think what main thing what
yeah,
came up here right now is the mindset in
correct.
sales. And if you have a strong mindset, even after getting hell lot of rejections, and then again dialing the second call, you're doing it, you win.
Exactly,
It doesn't matter the
exactly,
result,
correct.
it's the effort that you're doing. So I'll just share a story which happened to me in, I guess, in October, November time. So I was
Okay.
cold calling, I was doing in US shift, and I cold call, and this guy was literally shouted on, and there was no
Okay.
point shouting, and he just shouted on me, and he hung up. And so he cursed me and he shouted and he hung up on me. And I did nothing. I just cold called the second person.
Hmm.
And I shared this story with my manager. And my manager said, "Did you cold call after that?" I said, "I cold called 10 people and I booked one meeting after
One
that."
minute. Wow. Great.
And he said that that's the win. That's the win for you.
Great. Great.
Because
And you were prospecting into India or it was some other
US,
country?
US. It was in
Okay,
US.
yes. Okay, yes.
And because I know that, bro, I am doing the right thing. I'm not, like manipulating anyone. I'm just calling you because I see there is a pain point. I see there is a need. That's why. If you're busy, if you don't have time, tell me. I'm happy to call you again. I'm happy to call you when you give me time. But the way you react with me, it's your problem. It's not my problem. The way I react, it's how I deal with it, right? So I dealt with it like just another.
Like any other point.
Yeah, it's just okay. That
Great.
guy is going through some problem. So let it be. I call the second person. So that's the mindset, because a lot of my teammates said, "Hey, I can't call after that. Whatever happened to you, I can't." I said, "Bro, then like what's the point? Like if you don't call after that, it's like you will be not getting the meeting which you are supposed to get."
Exactly.
Right. So that's the mindset which comes in, and like that's the story that came to my mind while we are talking about mindset. So it's
yeah. So
great.
Dave, यहाँ पे क्या होता है ना, like when you got this experience, like when you have this kind of insult, तब तो और ज्यादा कॉल करना चाहिए क्योंकि भाई बेइज्जती तो हो गई है.
बेइज्जती
Now I
already हो
need
चुकी
demo.
है, correct.
हो चुकी है. Now I
Exactly.
need demo. And one more thing, when anyone picking up your phone now and he's saying I'm occupied right now, he is lying to you. If he
Hmm.
is really occupied, he will cut your call. He will not pick your phone. If anyone
Correct.
picking up your phone, that means वो भाई टाइम है, उसको तुम्हारा सेल्स पिच पसंद नहीं आया. It doesn't like your voice or whatever you are selling. That's why he's saying I'm occupied.
I'm
So
occupied.
it's better when anyone's saying, literally अगर सब कोई रहता है, you'll feel it in a tone that yeah, I'm in office or something, or I'm in a meeting.
Yeah,
वो
it's
tone अलग
someone's,
होता है.
yeah, correct,
Yeah.
exactly. Meeting
But
meeting
if
पीछे
someone say,
चलते रहता है, right?
हाँ हाँ, and when anyone saying कि call me later or maybe after 6 p.m. or something like that, you have to understand that you have to find other POCs in that company. This
Correct,
person is not
correct.
going to take you ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Akil, so right now at WebEngage, you sell to marketing folks, right?
Yeah, all of
So
the marketing goals.
so one question regarding that: how do you prospect these people, marketing folks? Like, what is your you know criteria to find these people? How do you reach out to them? What channels do you use right currently?
So, if I'll just start with channels first. So I do prospecting. I understand what is the ideal customer profile. That was essentially something that my company has already told me. So this is your ideal customer profile, and you need to prospect accordingly. But first, I'll talk a little bit about channels. Now, a lot of people are very heavy on email. A lot of people are very heavy on cold calls. I'm the latter one. So I'm pretty heavy on cold calls only because of the fact that I see कि अगर आप 10 मिनट एक ईमेल पे डाल रहे हो, if you're investing 10 minutes of your time on an email to write one email which you're not expecting a response on, it'll be better if you do 10 cold calls in 10 minutes and then book a meeting. which is
Absolutely.
why I understood that it is better. So जहाँ पे आपका return on investment ज़्यादा मिल रहा है वही use करो. So I'll first talk about channels. I generally use pretty heavy on cold calls since I'm prospecting into the India market, right? I'll also prospect into the Southeast Asia market in a couple of approximately 2 quarters right now, and I'll probably go into the European market as well. Now, talking. So this was more about channels. I'll just speak about a little bit about what my prospecting routine looks like. There's no routine first of all. I It's not like कि मैं एक specific time zone पे ही prospect करता हूँ because sometimes meetings come up, internal meeting, and there are a lot of things which happens, and I would actually give a little bit of suggestion to all of the people in sales right now is आपको prospecting करने के लिए perfect routine नहीं चाहिए.
हाँ,
आपको बस prospecting करना है, which
करना है.
means that whichever time zone that you're prospecting into, just make sure that you're doing it every single day. Now, if I were to talk about ICPs, how do I prospect is something that needs to be said out loud. So generally, I currently work into the startup as well as the mid-market segment. So startups and mid-markets, में generally the decision makers are CEOs, CMOs, the marketing heads, and the growth heads. So these are the four decision makers that we currently have, and sometimes the COO is also involved. What I generally do is we have a set of tools. So I'm pretty fortunate to be working at WebEngage because they've provided me almost every tool that is needed for prospect. So generally, what I do is go to Sales Navigator, apply all the filters, see. So we also have a criteria in startup program, right? So whichever company is less than 3 years old, less than having 50 employees, and is funded from pre-seed to pre-series A. So these are the companies that we look forward to. So I put all of these filters. There's a lot of filtration process that goes up, and I have a list of all the companies that are there. So after those companies, I'm not very sure if you know about Interact. It's more like a newsletter platform where it gives you all the funding news across India and subcontinent. So all of the funding news are there. I first go into the funding news, all of the companies which are there that have been funded recently. I go there, see if the criteria fits into the startup program. Then I go on to cold call the I generally do it for the founder and CEO. That's the first thing, right? Because I genuinely feel that rather than going from bottom to top, it is better that you go from top to bottom. क्योंकि अगर CEO आपको reference कर देता है to some person who's down there, who's an operator or a marketing head, that essentially makes him, obliged to get into a meeting and then give back to the CEO on what exactly the discussion was. So that is how I feel. I understand that. अब मैंने जब भी call किया, whether it is a mid-market company, whether it is an enterprise company, whether it is a startup, तीनों में मैंने same process follow किया कि I generally call the CEO, and I call the CEO, in a tone more like a CEO. So it should also, your tonality essentially matters a lot. So if you're saying, hey, hi, can I speak to, am I speaking to this person? Am I speaking to Pradeep? Am I speaking to this? नहीं होगा. Hello, yeah, hi Pradeep. Am I speaking to Dave? Yeah, so ऐसे मतलब there has to be a tonality change as well when you're actually speaking to CEOs, because then the their perception of you as a person will essentially come. So when I start my call, people generally do understand it's a cold call, but they still continue understanding that this guy is of repute in the company, which is why they don't drop the call very generic. But I'll have to figure out for the other markets as well. I'm still figuring it out. So that is, the prospecting routine. I do prospect approximately around 10 accounts per day. And the only accounts, so there are a lot of times as well where the person does not hang up but says that I would not essentially want you to call me again because you're already using competitive platform, you're not looking to change.
Hmm.
That is when I start sending them video prospecting. अब वो आप उसके उसके पेन पॉइंट पे पूरा हिट करता है. Like let's say I generally record my screen on the website itself. मतलब मैं उसके website पे जाता हूँ, मैं बताता हूँ हाँ these are the things that you can actually do from which is being better from your competitors, right? And that is essentially, I think, something that you would need to look at. And since it's more like a startup program, we have this 6 months free credits platform, which is where it actually becomes a little bit more exploratory for the person as well that's given पैसा नहीं लगे, so that I can check the platform again. I have actually had a lot of people shifting from a lot of our competitors to WebEngage, right? So that is where the difference comes into play, where you need to follow the top bottom approach. I mean, it's something that is really working for me. I'm not very sure about all the people out there. And prospecting, you just need to prospect every single day. You need to identify the right ICP and just pick up the phone and dial. इसके अलावा आपको कुछ नहीं है. Like you need to have that set process in place.
I like how you said
Right.
pick up the phone and dial. That's great.
That phone going to make you money.
Correct, correct. I mean, होता ना like ABC, always be closing.
Yeah.
It's something that
Yeah.
I've actually, you know, so it's more like a pretty old quote, but आज भी वो काम करता है. आज भी वो उतना ही valuable है जितना पहले.
Yes, yes,
Right.
definitely. Sales is in a same way coming from all along. वो सब चल रहा है. सिर्फ कुछ चीजें चेंज हुई है, but वो चल रहा है.
Exactly, correct.
So, so right now I understood that how you prospect and how you prospect the marketing folks. So, but obviously when you started as a SDR,
Mhm.
I am sure that you got a lot of problems. You faced a lot of problems in your
Oh my God, the
so
problems that I face.
right now if you
Yes.
go back to your initial days
Mhm.
and if you think यार ये अगर ऐसे करता तो ये ठीक होता. So what
Mhm.
things do you want to rectify that you could have done it in this way or in changed it in XYZ? What
Okay.
would that thing would?
The first thing that comes to my mind is अगर आपको कोई prospecting script दे रहा है, that's a cold calling script, ditch that. Just ditch that. Because you need to, because the person that has given you the cold call script has been working for him, not for you.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
that's just that first, and also understand what essentially would be work. So generally, when I started as an SDR, the first thing that I didn't know was how to speak to the decision maker. So I generally, at that point of time as well, I started calling all of the decision makers itself. One of the people that I cold call in the first week itself, he said, Akil, I see that you're reading the script that has been given to you by your company. It is better कि आप मुझसे बात करो rather than reading out a monologue that has been already sent to you.
Oh
so
shit. Hmm.
so he was a CEO of a pretty big company. I won't be able to name that company right now, but yes, I have done a lot of mistakes. If I were to talk about, I'll just speak about what mistakes that I did and what could have been better that I could have done at that point of time and not doing right now. So the first thing is, as I'm starting as an SDR, I did not prospect a lot. That was the first mistake that I did. The second thing is that you need to have your own script, but you should not essentially follow the total script because then your tone as well as your the conversation sounds scripted. So that's essentially something that you shouldn't do. The third thing is whenever you're prospecting into different geographies or whenever you're prospecting into India, add a little bit of pain point. So you should always, one thing that I've actually learned is there are a lot of pain points for every consumer that you're speaking. अब उसमें से the most important pain point which you're seeing across spanning across all the people that you're speaking to, make that a point to start the conversation. So whenever I start a conversation right now, I'm like, I believe I've been speaking to a lot of people, and this is one pain point that they're actually having in a lot of domains that you're currently experiencing in terms of the domain that you are right now. So that is have been working approximately 80 to 90% of the times for me, which where you need to have a specific subjective pain point across the total industry-wise forum that you have. So if that pain point is not addressed, and more or less approximately 80% of the times you need not ask 10 questions to the prospect to understand what is the pain point. You can start with a pain point to understand if that is a pain point or not. So
right.
that is one thing that I actually understood being an SDR. Another thing was I started from the bottom to top approach. There were a lot of times where I had the meetings fixed with marketing. Manager HRs and a lot of other people in the HR domain, HR executive assistant. But we had the meeting. We understood that these guys have a pain point, but that influencer was not being able to influence the CHR or the director HR well, which is why I understood that it is better to directly call the director HR to get on a meeting. And that
Yeah.
is when I understood that do not exactly call the operators if they won't be able to give. So 90% of the time, the operators आपको direct decision makers तक नहीं पहुंचा पाएंगे because of some odd reason. which is where I understood that it's better to call people from the top and then, filter down to the bottom. So these are some of the mistakes that I understood starting out as an SDR. And one more thing which I want to add on is when you're prospecting, it should not be essentially that you're doing 100 calls and booking one meeting. It should be doing 10 calls and booking one meeting, which is essentially the personalization engine fits into it. So you need
Ah,
to personalize the call a little, taki whenever you're speaking to a person, he understands that you understand.
hmm.
And that is where the
Yeah.
difference comes into the picture.
That's
Hmm.
actually
True.
that's a very good advice. Uh, for you, top to down, what top to down approach actually work. For me, actually the opposite work.
Okay,
Down.
bottom to bottom. No, no, of course, I've seen a lot of people doing from a bottom to top, but for
Yeah,
me, as an SDR, it has not worked till
yeah.
date, maybe. Yeah,
I
So,
think it
so
also
it's
depends. Yeah,
yeah,
tell.
it's all about it's all about connecting the it's person who have the real pain, right?
exactly,
For Akhil, CEO have the pain to understand what his employees are doing, right?
exactly. Correct,
For
correct.
Dave, people who are working have the real pain and they need solution. So that's why when they
Yeah, that's true.
approach
That's
those
true.
people, they take this forward to top management that hey,
Forward to
I'm
the top
feeling
management. Correct.
yeah, that this is my pain and I got a solution. Now you have to work on this and you have to get me this solution. So
Hmm.
this
Correct.
is what
So,
happened. Maybe
yeah,
yeah.
I'll just add on to one point here. So, generally, Dave, when you're saying, I actually totally agree to your point that a lot of times bottom to top also work. So, in that case, whenever this happens, what I generally do is I'm also bringing the director HR on call or the CEO on call plus the operator that is there, which
Hmm.
means the end person who is facing the problem. So उसके बाद फिर कोई option ही नहीं बचता that they won't go back to the director HR or they won't have the
That's good.
exact decision. Yeah. So that is why I totally make it a point to have both of those people on call maximum times ताकि there's no reason for them to ditch me. There's no reason for them to ghost me now कि यार वो reply नहीं कर रहा, I'm not getting approval for this, that, so on and so forth.
Ah, that's a good way to do it.
There's a 1 2 by 2 matrix in sales where there's a
Haha,
four
got
boxes:
it. Yes,
influencer,
yes, correct.
yeah, decision maker, and you have to follow that. That who are the real influencer, who are the real decision maker. Either you have to connect with the influencer or decision maker.
And
So
there's
for
another one,
they,
champions.
Champions.
champions are also there. Yes, right. So either you have to connect with the champions, influencer, or decision maker, but you cannot connect someone who is not influencer or decision maker, but still you are talking
Exactly.
and he is like कल meeting करते हैं परसों करते हैं
हाँ,
and
exactly. वही figure out करना is more important.
right, right.
And right now, me, they, when you, we generally catch it from the tone of the voice itself. कि नहीं भाई, ये तो decision maker, ना ही ये influencer है.
हाँ. Right now, like even the way people ask you question about your solution is also make you feel like who is he, right?
Exactly,
He
correct.
what kind of question he's asking? Is he into too much technicality or solution, or he's too much into pricing, or he's just like on the sake of हाँ और क्या है और क्या है और क्या है kind of thing, right? So
Correct,
that
correct, exactly.
if you're talking lots of people, if you're talking lots of client, you'll easily get to know that what kind of in which in which slab this person is falling. So वो पूरा का पूरा पता
Exactly.
चल जाता है, right?
But like really appreciate that you just started out a little while back, but you know almost everything and how to
Oh yeah,
understand
not
people.
everything. Just
That is why I said almost everything. Like
yeah,
for an SDR, you'll become an AE pretty soon. I know that, but just to give you a quick background.
yeah. But
So with
yeah,
Dave, I what I really feel now with Dave, what is the best part that he know where to learn and how to learn and how to learn and relearn. Most of the
Exactly.
people don't. In sales,
Correct.
most of the people what think कि जो मैंने सीख लिया वो best है,
Hmm.
right?
Exactly. So
But
unlearning. You actually use the correct word for it. Unlearning is the most important in sales. कि आपको unlearn
yeah,
क्या करना है.
correct,
You need to know
correct.
what you do not need to know.
Yeah,
because I'll tell about one example of unlearning is
Hmm.
so whatever worked for US market will not
Hmm.
work for APAC market.
yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Correct.
So if I go by the norms that I have done in US market right
In
now
US.
and prospect in APAC market, if I do the same thing, And
Hmm.
if I become rigid that ये भाई काम किया ये तो काम करेगा ही,
काम करेगा ही
तो
एग्जैक्टली।
ये कभी काम नहीं करेगा. I have
एकदम
to
बिल्कुल
again
भी नहीं।
experiment कि
एग्जैक्ट
यहाँ which is working, emails, cold calls, LinkedIn. It's like again you unlearn things and then relearn
देन
again.
रीलर्न थिंग्स,
Correct.
करेक्ट करेक्ट।
So that's very important. That's a good topic that Pratik brought up actually. I actually want to deep dive into Akil's story, which I got to know when I met Akil for the first time over a Zoom call. He actually has done, like, he's been a founder, he has started a company, then he has done door to door sales, now he's been into SaaS sales. So it's like quite a lot of journey that he has covered, and I want to know that more about that. So, Akil, if you can put some, light on your journey.
Absolutely. Brace for the impact. It'll be a pretty long story, so I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
just want you guys to listen carefully
We
on
All
we
what I
yours.
will.
have we have lots of time. We have lots of time.
All
We
yours.
are
All yours.
totally, yeah, बेकार बैठे हम यहाँ पे.
So I'll start from the very beginning. You don't know, like this was something that I did unconsciously, but it just happened. I was in kindergarten, so that was the KG school that I was in. The first thing that I sold on stage in front of 150 people was vegetables. Like that was in kindergarten. It was more like a drama show which had happened, and the story was given to me by my mom when I started in sales, like hardcore sales. My mom told me, "अरे तुमने पता है तुमने ये भी बेचा है?" So
Okay.
that was essentially how I started. I started selling vegetables in kindergarten. That was my first. And when I became a little conscious, when I was in class 3 and 4, so I belong to a pretty humble family in background. My dad has a retail shop in Kolkata. You remember when we had these Alpenlebeka whole jars? You guys, got a lot of gifts there. Some cards milta tha, some some kind of toys that you got, that guys got. What my dad used to do was, so let's say कि अगर आपने 10 chocolate खरीदा है, you would want to have a gift from that shop. But my dad said कि चलो एक काम करते हैं, let's not give you the gift right now. And all of the gifts that he bought from getting all of those Alphalete boxes, so he bought it in total jars, which means it was kind of a carton of 12 boxes and 13 14 boxes. So what
Mhm.
generally happened was that he took all of those toys of all the 14 jars and gave it to me. अब मैंने क्या किया? I went to school. I was in standard 3 at that point of time. I said there's an offer. तो आप Alpenlibe खरीदो, आपको 10 रुपए में एक टॉय मिलता है. What I'll do is I'll give you one toy for 5 rupees, and if you buy two, I'll give it to you for 15. I mean 10. So
Oh,
that is how I started, which means it was more like a toy selling business, which I started in standard 3 itself. And and also you might have remembered all those WWE cards, right? Where
uh-huh.
Oh God, I
Undertaker,
was fan
John
of
Cena.
that. Yeah, yeah, I
Yes.
was the fan of those cards. Oh God, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I've sold even that too. Like if you buy 10 cars, I'll give it to you for 10. If you buy 20 cars, I'll give it to you for 50. That is what it
Seven.
was.
What was the price? 7 rupees, right? 7 or 10
Yeah, it,
rupees.
it, it was no. So I bought all of these for free because my dad essentially
Yeah, yeah.
got them for me. So all of these boxes, right? Alpenlibe ka boxes hota tha. There were a lot of, if you buy a Bonvita or a Bourbon biscuit, you got a lot of cards there. So जो पूरा cards का bundle रहता था, if you buy one Bonvita biscuit, you'll get one card. तो वो पूरा bundle ही पापा मेरे लिए लेके आ जाते थे. What I used to do, because I actually wanted to earn a lot of money, I had this in my mind कि हाँ बड़े होके कुछ बड़ा करना है और पैसे ज्यादा होने चाहिए. So
Hmm.
on standard 3 itself, I started selling those toys, those cards as well, and that was another thing which I wanted to share, because when you're talking about just sales, so I have, that is why I said from the dawn of civilization, everyone and anyone that has been doing unconsciously, subconsciously, that is sales.
Right.
So
True,
so
true.
that was one thing. Now coming on to the point, when I was there in standard 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I started in debates, allocutions, extemporaries. So in standard 6, I was placed 10th position. Standard 7th, it was fourth. Standard 8th, it was first. Ninth, first. 10th, first. So that is how I started. I actually understood two things. One of it was, and I also won a spelling bee competition, which essentially told me that I'm pretty good at spellings as well. So that essentially gave me a good knack of what I wanted to do. One of it was I knew that I was good at speaking. the other one that I was good at writing. अब ये दो मेरा strong suits था.
Hmm.
That I essentially understood. But मुझे ये नहीं पता था that this can be correlated to sales or indirectly related to sales.
Right.
अब
Of
so at
everything related to sales.
exactly that is what I was trying to gauge. So I didn't
Mhm.
know that this was sales. I didn't know that मतलब मेरा misconception ये था that forced manipulation, credit card sellers, health insurance sellers, बहुत सारे sellers available है. But what I wanted to tell to the world is that sales is not what you're talking about. That essentially is not sales. It's forced manipulation, making you aware of uninformed tactics for you to sell. That essentially I do not really believe that this is really sales, to be honest. Because if
Yeah,
you're not
yeah.
helping people to understand the value, so let's say if you are selling a product for rupees 100, if the value of the product is rupees 100 and you're not providing value in multiples of what the product price is, I don't think you're doing good in sales. So let's say I'm talking about Traco, whatever MRR value that you generate, if you're not being able to give them 5, 6, or 7x of the ROI of what they're spending on you as a platform, I don't think it essentially boils down to what sales essentially is.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that is one thing which I wanted to talk about. So this was till the 10th standard. I didn't know it was sales. I didn't know it could be correlated to sales. But then when I went to college, on the first day of the college itself, I was, I went on stage. I spoke a little bit of about me. So I was essentially from a West Bengal board college. I mean West Bengal board school. So there, the speaking English population was essentially pretty low, and then we also understood that if someone is, if you are from an ICSE or a CBSE board, you'll understand that the speaking, language essentially is pretty different from West Bengal board. So everyone started asking me, since you've studied from a West Bengal board, how is your English pretty good? And all of those kind of stuff. And then on the first day I spoke, I won an award. And from that day itself, there was a media publication house in college. So that was known as HIT and Insight. So there were 3 rounds for it. I applied for content writing as well as PR and communications. So essentially, my application was shortlisted for both, which means PR and communication ke liye bhi, where I spoke to them in an extempore, and the second was in content writing. So that essentially brings me to the point of how I got recruited in the team as a content writer plus a communication, PR and communication brand lead. So that was another, and then I participated into a lot of MUNs, debates, a lot of presentations. And there was also one time that we hosted this Riviera College Fest, which essentially was one of my core competencies in hosting the fest, essentially. And so at that point of time, on the second year itself, I started reading a lot of books. Now, when I started reading one book, which was known as uh, Shiv Khera's book, I'm trying to remember the name of the book. It was known as Sell something, something. I'm not very sure of what is the name of the book, but that was the first book that I read for sales. And after the college, yes, so in between the second year, I started reading a lot of books. And the third year, I got an offer. So, pandemic started in March 2020, right? So I was in my third year in 2020 itself. So one of my earlier mentors, he told me that, Akil, would you want to work for my organization? It's more like a web and app development company. So then I thought, why not do it? Like, let's see if I can actually crack the code of selling to people and actually helping them understand what exactly is, the value that I bring to the table. So it was more like an app and web development company. I went there, and fortunately, unfortunately, there was only 3 people in the company. So अब मुझे sales के अलावा सब कुछ करना है. Whether it was billing, whether it was GST filing, whether it was selling to people, whether it was mass destruction. So let's say if a user or a client has already, paid for the service in advance $1,000, अब उसको एक साल भर से product मिला नहीं है, what happens then? So I was there as a mediator to help them understand product आपको क्यों नहीं. So that was the point that I also understood that सेल्स हार्डकोर सेल्स के अलावा भी जो कुछ भी आप कर रहे हो वो भी सेल्स में. Then उसके बाद there was a lot of hustle and tussle. I worked there for approximately 8 months, which was more like a web and app development company. They promoted me to a business development manager. It was also brought in a lot of business for them. अब उसमें मुझे ये नहीं पता था that was essentially sales that I was doing. मुझे ये करके recruit किया गया. So you know all of these titles, growth experts, growth consultants, business development consultants, product evangelists, कुछ भी ले लो यार. अब मतलब जो भी कंसल्टेंट होता है, अब पीपल आर प्रिटी रिस्क अवर्स टू सेल्स पीपल. अब अगर मैं एक इंटरव्यू में जाऊंगा और let's say if I'm giving a product demo and I'm saying, hey, I'm a sales specialist at WebEngage, जो mindset रहता है ना people का, from understanding that he's here to sell me, and if I say that I'm a product evangelist at WebEngage, वो बहुत different हो जाता है. Now,
Exactly.
now they understand that he's not here to, you know, sell me the platform, but he's also here to help me understand why exactly is the platform needful to you. बट अगर वही परसेप्शन मुझे चेंज करना है, आई वांट टू eradicate the perception of why sales is not something that you're thinking of it to. Credit card is not sales, health insurance is not sales. That was sales 1.0, 2.0, जो भी आप उसको बोल दो. But actually sales is something that you would find value of, and that is where the difference comes into. So that was one thing. So after this, it's been a pretty long story, but I'll still continue.
Yeah.
In the third year, I stopped being that business development manager for the app and web development company. Fast forward another year. This is another interesting story. Dave, I did not mention this to you. So I was actually working with the marketing head of Audi in Kolkata as
Okay.
well. So that was informally, it was total an informal discussion with him. So starting में, I had actually started a company that was known as Artrium Talent Space, and this is pretty parallel to what I was doing. So what I did in Artrium Talent Space, I was actually having a knack to build a business. I already had a lot of friends doing it. One of my mentors was from Tag Mango, so it's more like a YC backed company. It's a Y Combinator backed company. They've already raised
We
around
know
one
Tag
point.
Mango.
Oh, you already know Tag Mango. Great, great, great. So Mohammed
And
Hassan, he's the co-founder of Tag Mango. Uh,
he's from
how,
JVS only, Kolkata.
yeah, exactly, exactly, correct, correct, correct.
Ah,
So,
Yeah.
so Mohammed Hassan as well as Divyanshu Damani, these two. So Mohammed Hassan is pretty closely connected to me even today. And so Tag Mango was one of his ventures he raised. अब उन्होंने raise किया, तो I was like, चलो मैं भी खुद का कुछ start करता हूँ. But then I didn't know that it takes all of you. Everything that you have got to build a business, it takes all of you. आपका पसीना खून पसीना तो वो तो जाएगा ही. आपके पास जो भी जेब में है वो भी चला जाएगा. And
hmm.
to
True.
get returns on that, if you are thinking of short term returns on a business, just don't do it. Make it a point. Do not do anything if you do not have pocket deeps,
Hmm.
as deep as you've got. So I started this company called Arterium Talent Space. So this is also another interesting factor. I'll tell you what the company does. You've got LinkedIn, right? Look, we are
Yeah.
all a fan of LinkedIn. You know, we have a lot of profiles there. So what I wanted to do is, so this was for professionals. LinkedIn is for professionals, working professionals, white collar people. What I wanted to do from Artrium Talent Space was, so there are a lot of these artists like singers, dancers, musicians, comedy artists, a lot of these artists locally available in the market. But what they could not do is get mainstream media coverage, which means that if you are an artist from Kolkata, you will not be able to reach Mumbai in a big production house. What I wanted to do was consolidate all these artists from all across the country into one single community, which is known as Artrium. So that was pretty similar to say it was known as, LinkedIn for artists. That is
Hmm.
what I called it. And what I wanted to do was, from for all the media production houses, I actually came to Mumbai as well, where I met a lot of media production houses, uh, filled the entire platform with a lot of portfolios, and everything was on point. मतलब मैंने सब कुछ कर दिया था for the platform to work essentially. And two of my friends who they are Javed Akhtar and Bilal Ahmed. These guys are working in different companies right now, but they were kind of the CTOs of the company. So they built the entire platform. I was the one who was about to sell it, but I failed. That was the time I failed. And why I failed is another story. I'll just give you a quick background on that as well. So at that time, I spoke to a lot of these media production houses and companies and so on and so forth. What happened at that point of time was that these production houses said that आपका जो भी transactions होगा, that will be totally in cash. which means I will not be able to pay you from the merchant account that we have, which is essentially made a huge drawback because if I'm getting everything into cash and I'm depositing it in the account, I would not exactly have a lot of merchant transactions and then the government will start asking me question. आपके पास ये पैसा आया कहाँ से? If you're running a business, I do not see any transactions in that.
Mhm.
So that point of time, I spoke to everyone and everything that I wanted to do. सब कुछ मैंने finalize कर लिया था. So the supply was there, which means I had a huge pool of artists. मतलब I had around 1,000 plus जो पहले महीने में मैंने कर लिया था. So that was another sale that I was doing. Almost all of the good artists in the industry from Tollywood, Bollywood. मतलब Bollywood में तो काफी ज़्यादा बड़े हो गए, but yes, I had a lot of artists in these बहुत सारे Instagram influencers and all of the stuff which I had. But that was the point that I failed in execution of the plan. So the supply was there, the demand was not there. Even when the
Okay.
demand was there, I was not able to crack the code for, the cash transaction which was happening. So that was when I met Sabir Aluwalia. He was the marketing head of Audi pretty recently. He's left his job to have another startup. And before this, so that this was the essential learning phase for me when I started as I could call it an EA, an executive assistant doing. Before working with Audi, he was working with Porsche. Before working with Porsche, he was working with Ducati. Before working with Ducati, he was working with BBC Good Food. And before BBC Good Food, he was also he was working with Matrix. That's more like a SIM card, international SIM card company. So he was there into sales. His DNA essentially says that he's in sales, and then right now he's a consultant. तो मैं वही बोलता हूँ like सब कुछ होने के बाद you become a consultant. If you call yourself a sales consultant, maybe people won't give you a lot of value. But if you call yourself a growth consultant, तब हो सकता है कि people will start understanding of what the value that you would bring to the table. So
Right.
then when I, understood, I actually met huge amounts of people when I was with him. Like when I was with him under his guidance, a lot of things happened. A lot of people I met, a lot of top corporate honchos I met. And then I understood how exactly is he talking to people. Is he actually selling to people? Is he actually understanding the pain points? Like for every person that you speak to, आपको कन्वर्सेशन इंटरेस्टिंग करने के लिए कुछ ऐसा बोलना पड़ेगा कि आपका भी इंटरेस्ट है और उस बंदे का भी इंटरेस्ट है.
Right.
Only then is the point which is make so let's say if I had a lot of girlfriends in the past as well. So when I'm trying to sell myself to her, I have to talk in her terms, which means उनको क्या अच्छा लगे, to understand more about what she would like more, and that is where the conversation started. So
Hmm.
that is
Yeah.
also essentially what I did in terms of when I was working with the marketing head of Audi. I understood one single point, that was to start a conversation with a person. अगर आपको उसका एक भी problem समझ में आ रहा है, something is actually of interest to him, or you see that the person is actually talking about something which is very near and dear to you, talk about that itself. So you need to make the conversation pretty easy for that person to go on and not talk about stuff which is relevant to you as a person. So that is one thing that I actually understood from Sabir Aluwale. He was the marketing head of Audi. And that was the turning point of my career. Okay. Another thing was, so I worked with him for approximately 6 months. Uske baad, there was another thing that I did. So there was one of my college seniors named Deepak. He was running company called Advisure. That was more like an ed tech company, which
Hmm.
actually was very pretty similar to Class Plus. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it. Class Plus and Edmund. These are the two startups that are working good, and Teachment. These are three startups that
Hmm.
are working. And so what he actually wanted to do was consolidate all of the creators, educational creators, and help them make a online test portal for the students. So I worked there as a, you can call me a consultant at that point. I mean, that is how I would actually put myself in. क्योंकि मैं जब भी, so I also understood one thing कि मैं जब भी call start करता था saying that hey, I'm a business development rep at Admission, people used to hang up. और वो percentage बहुत ज़्यादा high चले गया when I said that hey, I'm a growth consultant at Admission and I'm a super advisor to them. I'm actually helping them understand what exactly are people doing. अब मुझे ये conception ही change करना है. Like why exactly is sales such a topic that people frown upon?
Hmm.
that is what I'm trying to figure out in this Indian SaaS, not just SaaS, but sales as an ecosystem in India. And I worked there for approximately 6 months. The company died down because of a lack of funds and product market fit nature. But of course, if we had a lot of money, probably we would have probably continued doing it. But then, and then again, there's another interesting story to it. So that was, 6 months of admission, and then are you guys familiar with Relevel?
Yeah,
Uh,
relevant.
yeah, so it is yeah, so it was Relevel by an academy. So after 6 months, I was like, अब यार क्या करना है पैसे भी नहीं हाथ में let's do something which from which I can get a job. At that point of time मुझे मेरे पास डिग्री नहीं थी. So I was kind of into the final semester. जिसके बाद फिर I understood. So I was actually, so since I was there in the edtech domain, तो मुझे पता था कि Relevel as a platform essentially provides jobs to business development reps, या product managers, and so on and so forth. You just need to give an interview.
Yeah.
That is totally on the basis of skills that you have. तो I appeared for an interview. उसमें I scored pretty well and across Kolkata. मतलब मेरा जब रिजल्ट आया था after a month or so after I was placed at Nova Benefits, which is more like a B2B corporate insurance startup. पूरे कोलकाता में I had 6 posters the
Oh,
across the total Kolkata. I would love to share it
When
with
it
you
was,
guys.
when it was, कब था ये?
So this was in June 2022.
yeah, I saw your post on
Oh.
LinkedIn about
Yeah,
that.
exactly, exactly. So
Okay,
it
next
was
time when
it
I'll
was
go Kolkata, I'll try to find your poster.
now it's totally, so the posters have been replaced. It was there for approximately one and a
अच्छा.
half months, which was there. So
Hmm.
it was there at AGC Bose
Wow.
flyover. It was there at Park Street. Park Street, pura exactly. You've heard of SSKM Hospital, right?
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So that place it was there, AGC Bose Road. There were Gadia Hart. So it was there were 6 posters, and I was one of the top scorers for level in the country from Kolkata, which is why all of the posters were there.
Awesome.
So
So
you level up the re-level, right?
exactly, exactly. So
Love
it exactly. So it was me and my mom saying that hey, Akil has got a job at Nova Benefits just through his skills, and it was written business development, representative at Nova Benefits. So that was the start of another timeline of career, which means I went into partial SaaS. Nova Benefits was a more like a digitized insurtech company where they help people traditional like the traditional insurance players in the market. They want to digitalize the whole system. That is when Nova Benefits came into play. Worked there for approximately 8 9 months, and then I switched to WebEngage, where I am right now. So I was a top performer at WebEngage itself. I fixed approximately 11 meetings in the same week, and the max that I fixed was 6 meetings scheduled in one day. So that was,
it.
exactly only through cold calling. And I was actually calling VPs, CXOs, and CHROs as well as director of HR at all of the top companies in India. So there were approximately 1,000 plus companies. Maybe 1,000 plus employees of companies. I was calling them. I actually had a word with Shadi.com, Anupam Mittal as well. But that was just for 3 4 seconds.
Oh.
That was just for 3 4 seconds that I did. And I also spoke to, what was the name of that brand? That's a ketchup brand. Can you just name the
Ops.
brand? No, it was from B, I think. Heineken, yeah. I spoke to Heineken's CHRO as well. I spoke to a lot of people there. I mean, jitne bhi enterprise companies there in India, even Axis Bank, and a lot of those were there. So that was why I was one of the top performers in the company. I left being the top performer, which is why I actually have a lot of pride in saying that. And now I'm at WebEngage, figuring out a lot of things in SaaS sales. So that was the whole journey of how it started and how it is going right now.
Crazy story.
Oh.
Pratik, what do you want to
So
say about this story?
I just trying to summarize all the things which you have said, like इतनी सारी stories मैं सच में सोच रहा था like what you have done,
Such a
so many
hustler, bro.
things
Such a
man,
hustler.
yeah,
अच्छा
इतनी सारी चीजें कर दिया यार.
एक बीच में मैंने ये नहीं बोला I also prospected into Australia as well. I think I put the post on LinkedIn up. So it was more like I started at 6 in the morning. मुझे पता था I did not have the perfect product international market exposure नहीं था. I also tried a lot of different accents too. and I'm pretty good at accents, to be honest. So that is why people did not hang up on me. उसमें बहुत सारे GDPR compliances है. If you are calling into Australia, they blacklist your number and so on and so forth. But this first sale that I got was totally for me. I wanted to test my caliber at that point in time. I did a sale of $100 for social media marketing for a kind of a friend startup. So मुझे test करना था कि मैं कर पाता हूँ, which is why I thought I'd probably do it. And after 400 cold calls, बहुत मेहनत लगा. I literally cried on the 390th call. भाई ये होगा कि नहीं होगा? And then on the 400th call, I sold $100 of social media marketing to another, person from Australia. So that was essentially, I thought कि अगर मेरे पास कुछ भी नहीं, I didn't have the right tools, I didn't have analytical data set, I didn't have मैंने कितने meetings convert किए, I didn't have a good sales professional to back me, I didn't have $36 million in funding which WebEngage has right now. मेरे पास कुछ भी नहीं था. Even then I did what I wanted. So it's just your belief in yourself which you need to have to make yourself successful. मेरे पास कुछ नहीं था तब मैंने किया. मेरे पास सब कुछ है तो मैं कितना कर रहा हूँ.
So
On
now we
point,
have
Pratik.
come to the end of our podcast episode. One last question that I have for Akil, since you have a lot of experience in sales, and I think this is the best question to ask you. One advice that you want to give to any upcoming SDRs, BDRs, or any people in sales, what is that one piece of advice? Very important that you feel everyone should know this.
So you're talking about upcoming SDRs, right?
Yeah,
Not
like
people
who
who are
are
already there in sales.
like I'm saying
As a
who
fresher who wanted to join
join, yeah,
this
as a
industry.
fresher.
Got it. So I'll just speak about one advice itself. So if you're coming into sales for the money, well and good. But if you're coming into sales just for the money, may as well leave it. Because you won't be able to survive through whatever's coming your way. Sales itna aasan nahi hai, and neither it is going to be easier in the future. There
Right.
has to be a hell lot of obstacles, troughs which you need to survive to become a good salesperson. If you want to become an ultra high performer, तब तो फिर बात ही अलग है. But if your motivation to come into sales is just for the money, may as well drop the idea because you will eventually go out of business.
That's a great advice.
Sales is a guilty pleasure, right? When
Of
you
course,
start,
absolutely.
when you start, you feel like यार क्या कर रहा हूँ मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ पर अगर एक दिन में you don't do these all things, you don't take that pressure, we feel like यार काम ही नहीं है क्यों
हाँ
काम
काम
नहीं
ही नहीं वही
है.
तो.
I have tried कि मैं छुट्टी पे रहूंगा, मैं अपने फोन्स नहीं चेक करूंगा, मेल्स नहीं चेक करूंगा,
ये
मैं क्लाइंट के बारे में नहीं
सेम
सोचूंगा.
सेम सेम
होता
पूरा
ही
सेम
नहीं है.
होता ही नहीं है भाई
होता नहीं
एकदम
है.
zero.
It's a guilty pleasure and it's totally different. Like बहुत लोग बोलते हैं कि पैसा पैसा money and all. I feel like if you wanted to make money, go do something else. In sales,
Correct.
definitely you can make money. Definitely you can be a star like Dave and you can ask whatever salary you want. But
Could
but
be.
again, for that you have to walk on those fire roads. You have to go through that hell life, and then you will
Absolutely.
reach there. तब you will be at that
नहीं,
position where you are asking, right, कितना पैसा चाहिए मुझे.
exactly. If you're still thinking about your prospects on a Sunday afternoon, just go into sales and drop the whole world down.
Exactly, man.
मैंने 2 दिन पहले I just did a tweet. मैंने 2 दिन पहले लिखा था कि if your closer are not giving you orgasm, you are not in sales.
हाँ मैंने देखा.
डर
बहुत सही
बना
था
डर
वो.
बना.
But
and
yeah,
this is what and this is what I have to be like, bro. मतलब अगर client close हो रहा है ना, that is the most pleasant thing happening in my life right now. Like
Exactly. Correct.
सबसे best कि client close हो रहा है यार after 3 months, cause I'm into B2B. वो बहुत लंबा sales cycle है, 2-3 महीने के बाद
हाँ
बहुत,
हाँ.
close हो
of
रहा है.
course, of
And
course,
it's
at
like कि
least.
आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स फीलिंग, वैसा तो कुछ और हो नहीं सकता. तो दिस आई रियली मीन इट. एंड जिसने भी पढ़ा होगा, जो भी सेल्स में है, अगर वो रिलेट कर पा रहे हैं, देन डेफिनेटली दे आर रियल सेल्स पीपल.
Correct. Exactly. So, Pratik, before building Traco, where exactly were you? Like, were you working as an SDR or AE or something like that?
I did so many things. So when I was in ICICI Bank, I used to do, I used to मेरी कंपनी में मेरे बैंक में लोग आते थे, मैं उनके
Mm-hmm.
एफडीज करवाता था. I used to ask them to open
Ah,
bank account. I also used to do, insurance selling and all. And then I feel like यार नहीं होगा, क्योंकि when you
okay,
are
so you
into
were an RM at that point.
yeah. So
Got
when
it,
you are
got it.
into financial institution now, there's so many things which you have to hide from client, right? So many
Correct.
things,
Absolutely, absolutely. True that.
right? And that was not making me, that I was feeling like कि नहीं करना है, ये करके तो नहीं हो सकता. ठीक
You
है.
could
Then
make money in that, but you do not
हाँ,
feel
but
satisfied doing it.
yeah, you cannot sleep in night, right? कि कैसे कर सकता
Exactly,
हो यार.
correct. कैसे किसी की तरह से कैसे कर सकते हो?
हाँ, तो फिर उसके बाद I joined, luckily joined a startup and they launched their software and all while working in software. And the best part, when I joined that company, I joined as a
Mm-hmm.
client success, right?
Hmm.
And client success में क्या किया था मैंने कि I started calling those people who are already there, and I asked
Mm-hmm.
started asking them references कि I saw this, you have two other branches, can you give me the reference? मैं वहाँ पे बात कर लेता, and all. And I was doing more reference sales more than my AE, राइट? क्लाइंट सक्सेस में रहते हुए तो मेरा एई जितना कर रहा था उससे ज्यादा मैं कर रहा था क्लाइंट सक्सेस में. तो फिर मुझे वहां से शिफ्ट करके दे मूव टू एई एंड ऑल, फिर बिजनेस डेवलपमेंट एंड लिस्ट गोज ऑन. फिर मुझे अपॉर्चुनिटी मिली कि मैं मार्केटिंग में भी दूं ध्यान दूं, तो फिर आई स्टार्टेड
Mm-hmm.
क्रिएटिंग कंटेंट एंड स्टार्टेड टेकिंग थिंग्स इन डिजिटल मार्केटिंग एंड ऑल. सो उसमें भी किया. So right now there's so many things which I have learned and relearned. So yeah.
Learned, unlearned, and relearned. Yes, that's what it is. That's what it
Yeah.
should be.
ये मेरा टैग होगा, लर्न अनलर्न रीलर्न. एनीवे. Anyway, I had a great time. What about Pratik? How was your
It was
experience?
great. It was great. Always a great, for me, talking to a people who is into sales and nailing it. It's a great
Hardcore sales. Like
conversation.
Akil was in hardcore
Yeah.
sales. And like I today in this podcast, I learned a lot of things. Obviously, I had an interaction with Akil, but this in this podcast, I learned a lot of new things, mainly about the mindset that Akil has. And I think that is
Yes.
very important. Like which is the highlight of this podcast, the mindset that he has. I'm sorry, there's a background noise, but thank you, Akil, for joining in and sharing your experience. And I think we started this podcast with only one aim, sharing sales SDRs or sales stories from India. And we couldn't have had the best guest, like as the first guest. Like,
Yeah.
and it
This is
was
the
you.
best start.
It is the best start, to be honest. So yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
so
This is
much,
the
Akil, for
best. This is
joining.
the best cold call of the day.
Of
Thank you
course.
so much, Akil,
Yes.
for joining. And yeah, how was your experience like being here?
So, one thing that I would actually want to highlight, the experience was absolutely great. Pratik, you came from. So there were two learnings that I had. Pratik went from being an RM to building Traco. That was one thing. So the journey अभी बोलने में बहुत छोटा लग रहा है कि या आरएफ से ट्राको में चला गया. I mean he is building startups, he is scaling the startup again. बट वो जो जर्नी का ऑब्स्टिकल्स, रन डाउन्स, फायर रोड्स, इतना कुछ आया होगा बीच. I would still want to, have another podcast with you to understand what your stories were rather than what my stories were. And another thing which I learned from Dave was you can start anywhere and still get to what you would want to do in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime, anywhere, if essentially that is something which is your calling. अब वही
Yeah.
सेम चीज जो मैंने 10 साल में किया, you can do it in 2 years if you have the right mindset to achieve it. So
True.
absolutely fabulous being here. I'm super stoked to be one of your first guests, and I believe to be, the best of the best in the coming years to come.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, bro.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.